What's going on, everybody? It's TripleCrown24 back today, doing what I normally do, showing off cards, talking about them, and talking about things that are related to them. But today's video is special in a sense that I'm not only doing a little rummage here of the Cabrera collection, which I haven't done in quite some time, but I'm also talking about the upcoming milestone for my favorite player, and that would be 500 home runs. Now, he will be the 28th player in baseball history if he is able to hit one more home run, which is a matter of when and not if, barring the unforeseen. But being one home run away, it's given me some time to reflect, especially because he was given the day off after he hit number 499 so that he could have a chance to hit it in front of his home crowd at Comerica Park. Now, last night it was 0 for 4 when I'm recording this. The Tigers are going to run it back against Cleveland at 6 o'clock tonight. So Miggy will get another shot there, and then they have another 3-game homestand following this one against Cleveland. So he'll have 5 games in total to try to get it at Comerica before the Tigers head back out on the road for a little bit. And I hope he does, because I wish I was there. I do not live in Detroit. I live about 4.5 hours away from Comerica Park, and as much as I would love to take the next week off and go to every game up there and try to be there for this historic moment, I'm going to have to spectate from the comfort of my home and stream the game through MLB.tv. But it is still just as exciting for me. Of course, being there, you can't really replicate that, but I'll say it's as exciting as it could possibly be for me, because, well, it's been a long time coming. I've collected Miggy for a while now, and I've told the story about it before. I'll give the Cliff Notes version, is that for the longest time I was really into the younger players and collecting the guys who were new to the team, but they would either leave, be traded away, and especially with the prospects, they would never even make it to the major leagues with the Tigers, because being a contending team for the majority of my childhood, we won't talk about those early 2000s years or maybe some of the recent years, they've been a contender, and when you're a contender, it usually means you have to depart with some of your better prospects, and the Tigers were no stranger to doing so. In fact, the trade that landed Miguel Cabrera in Detroit traded away 2 guys who were in the top 10 list for many of the prospect lists that were out at the time, in the form of Andrew Miller and Cameron Maybin, along with 4 more players to go along with them. That's pretty crazy to me, because that was a huge price at the time, but I still do remember that day when he was traded, and I've been a Miggy fan since. And we're coming up now. That was in the winter meetings, actually, of 2007. So this winter meetings will be 14 years since the deal that landed Miggy in the Motor City. And it's a trade that I don't think the Tigers have really ever looked back on. They were the clear winners of that trade, and Miggy has given so many classic moments to this team over the years. He has done so much for this organization, both on and off the field, and there's a lot of reasons why he's my favorite player. I've delved into those before, but really it wasn't until just about a little over 2 years ago that I decided to become a really hardcore player collector of Miguel Cabrera. And the reason for doing that is, for a long time I was wandering in the hobby, and Cabrera was one of those guys that if I opened a box of something and I pulled his card out, I would kind of always set it to the side. And as I was trying to find my identity, kind of in life too at the time, it kind of lined up like that, but also as a collector, I managed to really just get some introspection and find, what do I really enjoy? What do I always go back to? And kind of that nature of going back to and thinking, well, I always set aside my Miggy cards, and he, at the time when I decided to do this, would have been a Hall of Famer if he would have retired on that day. So why not go ahead and go for that? and I think you know the rest of the story. Um, I've kind of gone crazy ever since then, just picking up his cards, and I've had so much fun with it. I got asked recently by a few friends, do you ever get tired of collecting Miggy? Or would you get tired if he were to be traded away? And really, I think the answer to both those questions is no. Do I go through pockets where maybe I collect something else a little bit more heavy or I'm not as active? Of course. And do I go through times where I'm super hardcore checking eBay, every hour? Yeah, there are those days too. I'm sure that's a feeling that many a collector out there can relate, regardless of how you approach the sports collectibles hobby. And if cards are your thing, you'll probably really understand. But even if you're a memorabilia person, I think you'd understand that too, probably. That's one of those things that's part of the collector gene, in my opinion. But with Miggy, it's been fun to follow his chase to these milestones that are coming up, and it becomes very real a few weeks ago for me when I see that at Comerica they now have this scoreboard that looks reminiscent of the Green Monster out there in Boston, where they have a tracker for his home run total and his hits total as he closes in on 500 home runs and 3,000 hits, which only a handful of players have done in history. And I'm sure anyone out there who's a player collector of the guys who are in either of those respective clubs, or in some cases both of those clubs, will remember the moment when that player joined each club. And I gotta imagine it's a pretty special moment. Now, as of right now, I don't know the exact feeling, but last night was the closest taste that I've gotten to it, and it was awesome. I loved seeing the crowd last night at Comerica for every one of his at-bats. Even in it was the 8th inning when he took his 4th at-bat, and Miggy is up at plate. The Tigers are down 7-2. Their win probability is fairly low at this point in the game, but this crowd comes to life when he comes up to bat. They are on their edge of their seats the whole at bat, every single pitch, every swing of the bat. People tense up. There's this brief excitement. If he hits a ball and it goes into the air, the sound of the ball off the bat, you can hear it immediately. It elicits a reaction from the crowd. It's just awesome. It's those little things that you remember, and it's just one of those things that fuels me to want to go out and get more of his cards and collect more of his cards. And really, that's what's been the driving force. Now, when he does it, will it compare to when he won the Triple Crown, which is a moment I remember very vividly. I don't think I've ever told that story before, but I watched that game, and the Triple Crown race at the time, he had a very substantial lead in RBI. I think he was 11 ahead when it was all said and done of second place. So RBIs were never really a huge concern. Batting average, by the time that he got to the final week of the season, it was kind of wrapped up in a sense. He just had so many at-bats at that point that even if he slumped hardcore towards the end of the season during that final week, he would have been fine, I think. It was Trout, who was in his rookie season then, and Beltre, who were on his tail, but he seemed to have like a 5-ish point lead over Trout at the time, and didn't really seem to, that wasn't what the big concern was. The home runs were actually the most concerning, and that was the narrowest margin of victory among his crowns, so to speak. With his 44 home runs, it was one ahead of Josh Hamilton, who led the American League in home runs for the majority of the year. Miggy really did not spend too much time in front of him, and thankfully, when it was all said and done, he ended up ahead of Hamilton. And then also Curtis Granderson had a little surge late to tie Hamilton for second place with 43 home runs. So each one shy of Miggy's 44, but you can win the home run crown by 1 home run or 100 home runs. It counts all the same. And Miggy definitely earned his Triple Crown, and I remember him getting taken out of that final game. It was in either the 4th or the 5th inning. I can't remember which one, but he was replaced defensively at third base at the time. It's been a while since Miggy's been put at the hot corner, but he was replaced. And I got to say, props out there to all the Royals fans who were at that game. I have a lot of respect for the Royals organization in general. I've always liked their team, even though they're a division foe. They're definitely my favorite AL Central team that is not the Tigers, of course. But they gave Miggy a standing ovation. Now, there were a fair number of Tigers fans in attendance. I know that it's a historic night that's probably going to attract a lot of people to the ballpark. I imagine if Miggy doesn't hit his home run here during this trip back home, that when they go out on the road next, there will be some fans that follow him to the next few ballparks to witness history. But there had to have been a sizable number of Royals fans there for the final game of the season. And the fact that they gave him a standing ovation and cheered him as he walked off the field and clinched his Triple Crown was really a cool moment. That's something I'm always appreciative for the Royals fans for, especially those who were in attendance for that game. So I remember that moment, and I don't know if this will really stack up to that. I mean, a 500 home run, there's been several guys to do it in my lifetime, and I haven't really been around all that long. And I haven't seen, some of the all-time greats do it. I have in some sense. I would say if you hit 500 home runs, then you definitely have to, I think you qualify as an all-time great. But I'm talking about kind of that inner circle of Hall of Famers. Your Mantle, your Aaron, your Mays, those type of guys. Babe Ruth. Wasn't around to see their 500th home run, but I've seen some of them. Whereas the Triple Crown, there's been rumblings this year. There's been some people talking about Vlad Jr., but it's really hard to do. It is incredibly hard, and I think that's really reflective in why, in the members of the 3,000 hit club, why so few of them overlap with the 500 home run club and vice versa, is that there's been a lot of really good hitters who just maybe didn't have maybe the same power or just not enough power to push towards that 500 mark, and then vice versa. There's been some really prolific home run hitters who just really were not great pure hitters and still hit fairly well. I mean, you got to hit decent average if you're going to knock 500 plus out of the park, but perhaps maybe not as much as some of the other guys out there. So the fact that in reality he's staring down those milestones and will have them to add to his already Hall of Fame resume within the next calendar year, I'll say, is remarkable. And I'm super excited to get to be a part of that. Although I won't be there in person for at least 500, or at least I seriously doubt it, unless something really crazy happens. But I could potentially be there for 3,000 hits. I guess we'll see how things work out. That's still a long ways away. But I just can't express how excited I am to have followed him for this long and to now be at the point where I get to kind of witness this. And I think it's something that a lot of other collectors don't necessarily get to experience, and I wish they would, but that would, I think it requires a certain kind of focus on a certain player. I gotta say, there's probably a similar feeling if you're a prospector and your guy, for example, if you were an Acuna prospector or a Soto prospector. I know that there's a pretty big Soto prospector over on Blowout, who I imagine he's got to be over the moon with how his trust and I say investment not just as a financial thing in terms of investing in his cards. I mean more so as an emotional investment, because a lot of that does come with collecting a certain player, especially if you get into a certain prospect. Inevitably, I think if you do spend that kind of money, unless you're just absolutely loaded, there's going to have to be some kind of emotional investment that goes along with putting money into a certain player. So with that, I gotta imagine that's a pretty special feeling too. But to have followed Miggy's journey for so long and each of these cards, some of them overlapped on certain mail days. Some of these were acquired in bulk. But for the most part, each of these represents an individual mail day in time. Just because, some of the cards I'm showing here were not easy to obtain. A lot of them carried a price tag that was a little eye-popping at times, and I was reluctant to pay, but ultimately I was happy. I don't think that there's anything in my collection that I really regret buying. And for the most part, it's because I have the card, and I didn't put myself in a bad position after buying said card. I'm still going. Just have to be responsible about it. And I get very tempted sometimes to go and shoot my shot at some of these really big ones, and I just kind of have to keep myself grounded. But I'm proud of what I've built. This is something that it doesn't happen overnight, of course. And neither has Miggy's home run. And there's been good times and bad times. I mean, there's been times where I've had a one-of-one card that got lost in the mail. And it's extremely discouraging when something like that happens, when you have this card that you can never get again, that you're really excited about, and now it is out of reach. It is out of play because, well, the only one is its whereabouts are totally unknown. It's not that it's sealed away in someone's lockbox as part of their collection. It's just it's not there anymore. So that's kind of discouraging. There's been times where, like, for example, when he ruptured his biceps in 2018, and this was about a week before he was going to come to my neck of the woods where I would have got to see him play in person. So, that was disappointing, and having to go through the entire 2018 season. Not that the Tigers really had much going on that season, and it wasn't great. But to go through that 18 season for the majority of it without him, especially after he started the year batting .300 and seemed to be on track to possibly make a bid for an all-star team after a somewhat lackluster 17th season, it was tough. And then kind of seeing him have his stints on the injured list, it's not always sunshine and rainbows when you follow a current player. There are going to be down times for sure, and I see that with some of the younger guys who people follow, and I get it. I really do. Like the guys who are Acuna collectors, for example. Acuna's not my favorite player. I like his game. He's grown on me. I prefer Soto if I had to choose between the two. I know there are some people, sorry as I adjust my camera there, who kind of think it's one or the other, and I really do enjoy both. I don't really have a horse in the race between those two, but I definitely feel for the Acuna collectors out there, or even the Soto guys who might be panicking because he's not having the best season. Well, Juan Soto is still an all-star, and he's actually been all right here in the second half of the season. And I think he's going to be fine long-term. Not everybody is great 100% of the time, and that's kind of the same thing with Miggy too. He's had plenty of challenges. There's been some times where he's had slow starts. There's been plenty of obstacles for him to overcome in his career. But he has. And sticking through the tough times really makes it all the more rewarding. I know that we're kind of in a world today where instant gratification is a real thing, and I'm like that too sometimes, where I like to see certain things work out quicker. And who doesn't? Let's be honest, who doesn't like to be instantly gratified for these things? But being able to kind of look back and build up the memories and the collection that I have at this point has really I guess I'm proud of it, and I'm proud that I've been loyal throughout this journey. I know not every Tigers fan has been as on Miggy's side throughout especially these past few years, but I think a lot of it just is a byproduct of the lack of on-field success for the team. There's been some rough years in Detroit, and sometimes people have to target someone or try to place the blame when really there's just a lot of things that have resulted in this, and it is definitely by no means at all Miggy's fault. The Tigers are in a 6-year playoff drought right now, which will likely be 7 unless they continue this crazy run they've been on. But even then, they would need some help from some of their opponents who are ahead of them in the standings right now and threaten them for one of those wild card spots. But I digress with that. This isn't really talking about the Tigers as a team right now, it's more so as Miggy. And really as a team, I think what's extremely fascinating with this team is that in its 120-year history, no member of the 500 home run club has ever done so with the Tigers, and there's nobody who's really been largely associated with the Tigers. If I had to kind of go through the list in my mind, there are definitely some guys who draw associations with the Tigers for the wrong reasons. I know that Babe Ruth, my number might be off here, but I know for sure he's hit at least 100 home runs, and I know it's either 115 or 131 of his career home runs were at the expense of the Detroit Tigers, which there weren't as many teams back then, but the Tigers definitely were one of Babe Ruth's most victimized teams via the long ball. And then, of course, you have a guy like Jim Thome as well, which I feel like that guy probably hit half of his home runs against the Tigers, and he played for several different teams, but it's just our luck that 3 of those teams happen to be AL Central teams. They kind of capped it off with the home run there at Comerica Park for number 600, which has to be pretty fitting. It's probably his favorite place to go to on the road is Comerica. And then if you look at the guys who have actually played for the Tigers, you have Eddie Matthews. But let's be real here. I don't think anybody really remembers Eddie Matthews as a Tiger. In fact, I think most Tigers fans probably kind of overlook that he was around there in the days of the '68 Tigers, when you have guys like Kaline, Cash, and Freehand, along with McLean and Lulich, who are definitely much more closely associated with that '68 World Series team. So to get to the 500 home run mark, to consider how long this team has been around, and it's not like people hit 500 home runs every single year. It's only happened, if you were to stretch out the history of baseball, on average it would happen once every 5 years. But for a team that is as long in tenure as the Tigers, who have been established since 1901, the fact that nobody, despite some of the really prolific hitters that have come through the organization, have been able to reach that mark is really telling. And it makes what Cabrera has done all the more special. And I don't really think a lot of people understand how special this moment is going to be. We may never see another 500 home run guy in our lifetime. Now, in terms of 3,000 hits, nobody who's around today was around when Ty Cobb reached that mark. If you look at some of the other guys who are in the 3,000 hit club, the one that's probably most notable and most established with the Tigers, because he was a career Tiger, would be the guy who the team is kind of nicknamed after, Mr. Tiger, Al Kaline. Well, he's nicknamed after the team, not... I know I messed that up there. But the fact that Cabrera is really only going to be one of 3 guys who has that close of an association with the Tigers in the 3,000 hit club, I think is also quite remarkable, just because, again, there's been some really good hitters. And I would say Detroit, for the most part, we've had the big boppers. Cecil Fielder comes to mind. Of course, Cabrera. Cecil's son Prince Fielder had a little stint there with the Tigers. And Kaline, no slouch himself at the plate with the long ball. He hit 399 in his career, just not quite enough to reach that 500 mark. And there's been some guys in the 400 club and definitely the 300 club who had runs with Detroit as well. But one of the things that it just really stands out to me is that probably a lot of people don't remember the K-line home run. I mean, if you think about it, you have to probably be at least 50 years old to be old enough to remember his 3,000th hit. I think I might have just said 500 home run. I mean, I meant 3,000 hit. And, you know, I don't know when we'll see it again. It seems to get harder and harder for guys to get to that 3,000 mark. And I don't think that we're going to see anyone now that Pujols has gotten there and Miggy seems to be next in line. I don't know exactly when we're going to see that again. And it has always made me curious why people wanted to see Cabrera traded away or DFA'd, because why at this point would you not want to witness history, I guess? The Tigers will win another World Series one day. I don't know when, but they will win one. They've been there twice in my lifetime. They have a combined 1 win in those 2 World Series. I don't really want to get into that, but they will get there one day. They have 4 titles already, but they've never had someone reach this milestone before. And to have been along for the journey up till this point has been just such an awesome experience. And it makes my connection with my collection even that much more special. And I do really take a lot of pride in that. And I also, I just don't know how to describe it. There's this X Factor feeling, kind of. And this video is a lot of rambling here. It's mostly an excuse to show off some of my cards here in, I guess, a premature celebration for what is expected to come. Of course, I don't really want to jinx anything by kind of celebrating now. But it seems like his 500 home run is an inevitability. I know that there are people out there who will say that I'm a clown or something for like celebrating it already because, well, he hasn't gotten there yet. He only has 499, but you know, he's close. All right, one swing of the bat is all he needs at this point. So I'm just kind of sharing my reflections, I guess, as I move forward, and just kind of reflecting on my collection as well to go along with all the great Miggy home runs. Now, since he is going to hit 500 this year, in my opinion, I kind of take a look back at some of my favorite home runs of his. I thought I'd share those a little bit here before I go. I'm going to show off a couple more autographs, and then I think I'm going to dip into the inserts here too. Show those off as well. So, and then we'll call it quits. But his first home run was memorable. Of course, a player's first home run is going to be memorable for them. And there's been a lot of really great first home runs over the years, but his stands out. It was in 2003, June 20th, 2003, with the Florida Marlins at the time. He came up as a youngster with that team that would go on to win the World Series, and he hits a walk-off home run in his first game to win the game for the Marlins. So that is definitely, you know, Miggy being an extremely clutch hitter. Just the first of many examples of this guy just being a pitcher's worst nightmare. You don't want to see that guy at the plate in certain situations. And I forget who it was off of, but I'm sure that pitcher did not appreciate the rookie in his debut game going yard. But a guy who I am more familiar with his identity would be Roger Clemens, who faced off against Miggy in the 2003 World Series. And Miggy homered off him in the World Series, which there's a couple of things there. Number one is that he's still 20 years old at this point, and he's homering off of one of the most dominant pitchers of all time. In fact, I think you can make a case that Roger Clemens might be the most dominant pitcher of all time. Of course, there's plenty of debate there. I know that there's some controversy with Clemens as well. That's not really the point of that. Clemens was really good, and he did it on arguably the biggest stage, being a World Series game. In fact, I don't really know how you could debate that it wasn't the biggest stage, being in the World Series, unless the scenario within said World Series was a tad different. So those are a couple of my favorites there. In terms of his Tigers tenure, there's a few that stand out. One of them is in 2012, so in his Triple Crown season, there are definitely some classic moments, one of which comes in an August game. In fact, we're probably pretty close to the anniversary of this game. If not, we just passed it up. It was against Cleveland, and Cleveland at this point in time had a really dominant 8-9 guys. I believe it was Joe Smith and Chris Perez who were at the back end of their bullpen, and Cleveland had some ridiculous record. Like they were, I want to say like 57-0 or 58-1, something like that, when they led a game after 7 innings. And the Tigers pushed them to extras, were down by 3 runs in extra innings, and came back to win. And that victory was sealed when Cabrera launched one into the bullpen out in left center to hit a 2-run walk-off homer. And it was really a turning point for the Tigers. One of the running jokes at the time was that they couldn't win 2 in a row, which they couldn't really for the month of May. I think the Tigers never had a win streak. They only won, they would like win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And a lot of people do remember that team as being very good, but really there was a lot of doubt if they would even make the playoffs, because this is... the White Sox were really the biggest threat at the time. In fact, they led the Tigers by, it was either 3 or 5 games in September at one point, and the Tigers were able to defeat them a couple of times in head-to-head play, and from there it was not too much thereafter where they were able to seal the division title and wrap it up for the 2nd straight season. But there was some doubt at times. So the Cabrera home run, I remember in that game, was kind of the turning point for the team. Now, did they get back into first place right at that moment? No. But that was when kind of you felt like this team was destined to do something incredibly special, which they did. And one player in particular, being this guy, did something incredibly special to go along with that. But so you have that. The next season, this is in my top 2 favorite Miggy home runs for sure, is in 2013, post All-Star break. Miggy was later revealed to have played the season, the second half of the season, and then in the postseason with a torn groin and a really bad knee injury. And for the most part, I've had a knee injury. I've had actually both of those injuries. Neither of which is particularly fun, but in a game where he fouled 2 balls off his bad knee, bottom of the 9th, 2 out, down to the final strike of the game for the Tigers, he hits a 2-run game-tying home run with really only one good leg and the torn groin off of who else but Mariano Rivera at Yankee Stadium. Just a clash of the Titans, and it's definitely, it's in my top 2 favorites. And of course, I showed you a little earlier the clip, or the not the clip, but the card where he's hitting the home run in the snow, and that's the other one, opening day this year. One sec here, I'm gonna take some little personal information I have there. This home run right here, just such a classic moment. So I'm hoping there's one more classic moment in the future, but I'm going to wrap the video up here because I've been going for over 30 minutes. I'm pretty hungry. I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to take a little nap here before the start of tonight's game and get ready to potentially witness history. So thank you for joining me for this video, especially if you stuck it out till the end. I'll be sure to see you soon. Till then, Have a good one. Be kind.